morning, everybody. It's close to afternoon as well. How are you doing right now? Hello. Hi. Hello, Sally. How are you doing? It's my pleasure today to lead an esteemed panel in the topic of innovation in food and beverage production. But before I begin, I wanted to share a couple of things. This morning, we heard about innovation. Innovation in food and beverage, innovation in technologies, and how we can make lives of our consumers better. That's one theme. We talked of food security. That's another big thing on mine. And the third thing we talked about is consumer preferences. Our consumers are moving, in our globally, certainly in our region as well. It's up to us how we now bring this all together as manufacturers and meet this demand. All right, that's without further ado, I'm going to call my panelists because they're going to talk about exactly these three themes, and I'm going to quiz them on this as well. So let me invite on stage Mr. Joachim Yebouet, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Foodco Holdings. Mr. Dominique Floch, who is the Regional Director, Tate and Lyle, DMCC. Jacek, Plewa, who is the General Manager, Global Food Industries. And Nicole Rogers, who is the founder, Agriprocity. Let's give them a big hand, please. All right. These panel sessions, I'd like to really structure this session in a very intuitive way. It's between the speakers. And also I'll invite all of you to potentially ask questions to the panel to make it a little more open. All right? Is that fair enough? Okay, let me start with Dominique. Dominique, you have an extensive experience in innovation in technologies and how that can help in healthier options, in the business that you are with Tate and Lyle. So please help us understand a few innovations that are making us a healthier nation and a healthier globe. And which of these technologies will find a way into our region? Because that's what I really want to know about. So can you please shed some light on this, please?
Yeah, thank you, Avinash, for the question. I'm working for a food ingredient company, so I will speak about the latest innovation we have done into our ingredients. When it comes to health and wellness, which is a very important topic for the region, I think there are two key ones where we have done major evolution in the last 10 years. One is regarding sugar replacement. I mean, we have mentioned in several occasions this morning that it's important to reduce sugar. It's not that easy because sugar does a lot of good things. It brings sweetness, it brings mouthfeel. But in the last 10 years, a lot of new sweeteners have come, more and more from natural origin. And we also understood a lot about what sugar does in the mouth of a consumer and how we can be very close in terms of replicating this and making a sugar-free product tasting nearly as good as a full sugar product. And that's something which we are happy to see the trend that there is more and more push in terms of sugar reduction, and we do feel that we have some solutions that are ready to support this. Another important one is regarding fiber enrichment. Some of you may know that we don't eat enough fibers anymore. I mean, the food diet has changed over the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. We consume less and less, and we are roughly 10 grams below the recommendation. We have also developed a nice range of fibers that can be used in various food metrics and can help bridge the gap and really reduce the lack of fiber in a daily product.
Okay. It sounds like these innovations are already here, but I'm sure the audience is thinking is that this is one of the big things that we need today as well. So what's preventing these innovations from finding their way into products?
Well, some are already on their way. We already are selling some of it in the region. I think what is probably preventing is we see a consumer trend coming. We see as well, and we have discussed about the excise tax and the push for sugar reduction. We probably need to have, as we have also mentioned, the clear alignment between all the various parties in the food industry. I mean, as a food ingredient supplier, we can support the food manufacturers, but then the food manufacturers needs to have the right context in terms of tax or regulation that would support the move and the need to reformulate the product.
Okay. So there's a need for some cooperation here. Thank you, Dominique. I really appreciate this. Jacek, I wanted to ask you a question regarding disruptive technologies. And I'm sure we all want to know what are the top 3 disruptive technologies that have made a significant difference to healthier products globally, and which ones we hope to find in our region in the near future?
Great, thank you for this opportunity. But before that, I decided today to have a different color of the shirt. Usually when we come to the events, the dilemma in the morning is less usual, and the choice goes for white. I think a lot of things happening around the world. We've seen the things coming out of New York recently, so I decided to bring different color of the shirt as a message to all of the leaders that our way forward needs to have that angle, which is more green. So with this, I think it's so critical to see the future of the food industry from that angle of disruptive technologies. At Global Foods, we've been researching over the last 4 years plant-based proteins. We're linking that effort as well with the food security for the nation. Out of 18 products in UE food security, one significant part of this is related to meat. So we look carefully into the role of meat in the nutrition, at the same time role of meat across the globe, how that impacts food value, and how that impacts the society, how that impacts environment. It's a $1 trillion industry around the world, but things started changing because consumers started looking for healthier alternatives. Today, we are 7.6 billion people on the earth, and in the next years, we're going to reach 10 billion people by 2050. So the question is, how are we going to feed 2.5 billion people more? Today, we have 1.4 billion cattle going around the world, and we need 7 kilograms of grain to feed the cattle to give us 1 kilogram of meat. And if we cut the meat and we clean it, actually this 7 kilograms becomes 14, because half of the cattle, it's pretty much the waste. So it takes 14 kilograms of wheat, which gets into the animal to produce 1 kilogram of meat. And this 14 is on dry basis, which is usually 12% of the moisture, which normal grain is 20 plus. So this 14 kilograms becomes 28 kilograms. If we turn our habit from eating red meat into the plant-based proteins, we can feed 15 billion people as of today. So our call for action is we coming with products to disrupt the current realities and current industries, and we'll be the first company out of the Middle East to launch in November our plant-based proteins, which will have 30% more protein than normal range and 90% more fibers, which we just mentioned how important it is to get the fiber into our body. So this is the step one for us, and I think it's step one for the industry to further build on the plant-based proteins. But we see emerging trends which has not been commercialized yet, which is culture meat. This is the meat which is produced pretty much in the labs, and I think the prediction is that by 2040, this will be a leading force in terms of the consumption, taking 35% of a trillion plus industry. And we look into other elements of disruption in terms of the world of protein and sustainability, which are insect-based proteins. So I think the world will hear far more in the coming years in terms of those disruptive new technologies coming into the play to challenge non-sustainable current system of meat production.
Okay, fantastic, Jack. I really like your treatment of plant-based protein, because I think that's a trend globally, and consumers who are caring for the environment, caring for sustainable ecosystems will adopt. The biggest challenge we will face here is it as good as the original stuff? I think that's what needs to be taken care of, yeah? Fair enough?
Definitely.
Okay.
Taste is of the paramount importance to the consumers. So over the last 4 years, we did hundreds of consumer tests, and I think we coming with something which consumers will really appreciate.
Okay, fantastic. All right, we heard Dominique talk about sugar and technologies we can use for replacing sugar. By the way, did you notice everybody is talking about ingredient technologies? Nobody yet touched upon production technologies, but that's fine. They follow each other. So this question goes to you, Nicole. It says as follows. Sugar and syntax is here. It's here, it's around the corner. We heard everybody talking about it this morning. It has implications on the manufacturing industry. It has implications on the consumer. It has implication on the businesses, all right? So I want to know from you, what are the few food and product technologies that we as manufacturers, and I'm sure many of us are already working on it and know it as well, but I wanted to hear it from you, that we as manufacturers can adopt now and become competitive with them in the future in relation to sugar and syntax.
So I'm a bit of an outlier on this panel, so bear with me. It might sound like I'm talking crazy, but it will all make sense in the end.
No problems.
So when we look at sugar, and for the past 2 days I've had the pleasure of representing the UAE at the WHO conference on obesity for this region. And one of the things that was top of mind of everyone was finding a substitute that was natural. So something that is readily abundant, something that is maybe even a waste opportunity. And what everyone agreed is that there's this number that's published all the time about food loss around the world, and it's 45%, and it's not argued anymore. The UN posts the number, and pretty much any NGO when they're tackling food waste. And that 45% is almost entirely crop waste from fruit and vegetables. So something that we're advocating and that we're working with clients on is how you can process a fruit that could have otherwise been a waste and rescue it to become a natural sugar product. And we're seeing this a lot in emerged markets, like in the UK and in the US. So using things like mango powder in children's snack foods. And I think it's something that's going to become more prevalent. And in terms of processing, I think this is impacting the whole food system, and there's an opportunity to capture this waste closer to the farm and create processing systems that are more efficient so that that powder can be captured when the mango is super ripe and effectively costs nothing because it's never leaving that farm. And it's my humble belief, but some other people's too, that that'll be the future, is capturing really flavorful ingredients closer to the farm that otherwise never make it into the food systems chain.
Okay, the way you say it, Nicole, they sound really real.
Sounds easier.
It sounds really real. It sounds like they're ready to use. So are there, intermediaries or companies or R&D labs that can make them accessible to us?
So I would say it's very well used in startup and SME food company spaces, and it's very challenging for them to source these ingredients. So as an opportunity, I think there's space for investment, and I think it's a way that larger processors can get more involved down in the whole ecosystem. And so I'm not suggesting that Pepsi needs to become an expert, or even Tate and Lyle, in fruit powdering, because that's complicated. But for sure, I think maybe a theme from today and going forward with the kind of people in this room is that kind of thinking needs investment. And I think the consumers are going to continue to demand it. And either you're going to acquire that SME company who builds an incredibly strong footprint because they're essentially tailoring their ingredients to what the demand is. So either you're going to buy them at 50x, or you can help become a supplier to them and supply them the ingredients that they're struggling to find.
That was a call for support, if you didn't hear that already. Okay, that's great. All right, Joachim, I had a question for you, and I know that you are a firm believer in the eat well, live well mantra of life. And I also know that this is perhaps the biggest conflict that consumers in our region have. That is almost anything that's too healthy cannot be tasty. I pause here because I think that's a big conflict. So can you share with us a couple of key innovations in product and manufacturing that will enable our consumers to live your mantra and at the same time not compromise on their preferences for food?
All right, okay. Thank you, Avinash. Let me try to bring here the element of the consumer in the equation of innovation in food. Future food is not only manufacturing, not only technology. We have to start by that point by bringing in the aspect of the consumer. Future food will be about adding value to life. Future food will be about healthy food and well-being. This morning, early, Her Excellency the Minister said that we are what we eat. And by being so, we need to know what element the nutrition will take us to the well-being and the healthy status. So the manufacturer and the technologist in the process of food innovation will have to assisting the consumer in making the best choice, the best food choice for health being, and at the same time promoting wellness. I must say there are 4 or 5 drivers in terms of consumer aspiration that will drive the manufacturer in the process of his food innovation.
What are they?
You have focused health and wellness. You will have about all social and environmental matters, ethnicity matters that sometimes we tend to ignore, but ethnicity matter will be important. Functional foods, and not to ignore digital and technology transformation. So these drivers will definitely impact on the food innovation for the future development.
Thank you, Joachim. Actually, this was the first round of this panel, and the sense I was wanting to get from all of you is that how far are we in this region in accessing, firstly, do these technologies exist that will help us in a better, healthier choices, first. Second was that, are they accessible to us or not? I feel that they are not a dream, they are available, but more needs to be done in order to get them. So they are not exactly ready to use right now. Is that a fair summary? Yeah?
I mean, from my perspective, I think it's coming. It's almost there.
It's almost there.
When we see the consumers today, 40% of consumers in UAE are ready to look for healthier choices. 27% of consumers declaring being flexitarians. So I think it's clearly in the pipeline.
Okay, that's very good. That's very good.
This morning we had a good example from our colleague from Actia with the water example that he presented here. So it is made available to address the healthier aspiration of the consumer.
I like that. I like that. Thank you. Very good. All right, let's move to the next part of this panel discussion. This is around our consumers, because as much as we as manufacturers want to give healthier options to our consumers, they need to be ready to adopt them. You agree with me there? Yeah? Okay. So the first question I have is in this theme is for you, Dominique. To what extent do you think that today's consumer in our region is looking for a healthier change? And the second thing is, what market factors will increase their level of nutrition, health, and wellness adoption?
I think, as we have just mentioned, we see more and more innovation and more food products coming which are proposing healthier options. I think I will give you 2 answers, Avinash. The first one is my own observations. I've been in the region for 10 years now. When I arrived 10 years ago, I was quite surprised with the behaviors I could see towards health awareness. When I do compare where we are today, and when I go shopping, and when I do see that people and consumers are more and more looking for the healthy choice, a lot of things is happening and a lot of change is ongoing, and consumer is more aware and is really looking for what is good for him. We are in a B2B business, but we really want to understand very well those trends so as to adapt as well our product offering to this industry. We do frequently survey consumers. So the last survey we did was around 800 consumers in the GCC. And we were surprised to read that 52% of the consumers are really looking to cut sugar when they are buying food products. And the other one will give confidence to Jacek that he has done the right choice. 48% of them are looking for more fibers in their diet, which is sugar I was expecting. That's something that looks less of a surprise, I would say, because it's all around in the media and the awareness is there. Fiber was quite a good surprise to us because I was not expecting the consumer to be that advanced. So data are supporting what we are willing to do and what we keep hearing, which is we need to provide healthier food to our market.
Okay, so let's make this a little more real. What is preventing consumers from today having a juice that has 30% less sugar and tastes as good?
Well, I think it's about having enough option on the market. Again, if I just look at what happened in the last 10 years, I think 5 years ago, a lot of players would say, yes, we know we'll have to reduce sugar. We are thinking about it. Now it's about to happen, but it has to start so that we go there. I would also like to answer not on the sugar, but on the fiber. One thing as well that surprised us in the surveys that we did is that a lot of people were looking for fiber, were willing to have more fibers. But out of the 50% looking for more, only 25 were buying it, and 25 were not buying a fiber-enriched product because they could not find it in the product that they are eating every day. So there is something to do as well, which is to bring the fiber in what people are used to eat in this part of the world. A lot of products are imported, so when you import something, then it does not fit the local taste. So there is also a gap to bridge by developing the right product fitted to the local market.
There's something to be done with the consumers as well. Fantastic. Okay, Joachim, this is for you. You mentioned earlier that Tariq speaking about significant innovations in the water and beverage categories, where in some cases what the technologies used have really pushed the boundaries of water beverages in order to meet specific needs of consumers. Okay, I'm with you on this one, but I wanted to get your take on one specific example in the F&B industry in our region where the consumer has been really delighted because of the innovation either in the product or in the manufacturing or in the value chain. One instance of where the consumer has really been delighted with this innovation in any of these aspects.
I won't only be speaking about one specific case.
Yeah.
Because there are different examples even in our region here. The water is an example. I think in Jacek factory they are working presently on a processed meat without proper meat, which is happening today, and more you will find this product protein supposed to be with meatless on the shelf. It is coming, depending again on the functional expectation that you have in that food. We have worked in different products, like you provide oil free of cholesterol by working on the saturated. You will provide less salty to work on the cholesterol again, and on high blood pressure. You will work also on sugar free, like we have said earlier. So yes, there are different examples like this in local manufacturing, where the consumer meet exactly the need that he or she was expecting in procuring that specific product.
Thank you, Joachim. That's really good to hear. You had a comment here?
I would like to compliment and add on the thoughts from two perspectives actually. On the successful products, I think as the market is in transition, we need more education so consumer becomes more aware. We had this discussion today in the morning with the minister, and she highlighted education is key. And I give you the example. We're just bringing to the market the range of the burgers and nuggets under the brand of Healthy Farm. And in the standard burger, which some of you might eat from time to time, or nuggets with your children eating, we have 16 grams of fat, which normally consumer is not aware that consuming one burger, we're consuming 16 grams of fat. The products which we bring in has 8 times less fat. So when we talk about that to consumers, we say, would you like to have 16 grams of fat or 1.8 grams of fat? 10 out of 10 saying we go for a better choice. So I think building on your point, it's a lot about educating consumers. On the other side, I believe many parents and many of us using food as a currency of love. So we bring children to some of the restaurants and fast food because we believe we create emotional connection because maybe we are a bit busy for the week. So over the weekend, we try to create environment where, you know, we becoming closer to our children, seeing their happiness. But we have to know as well that if you take a nugget and you deep fry, each of these nuggets will pick up 20% more of oil. So if we consume 1 kilogram of these nuggets, which predominantly children consumes, actually they get extra 200 grams of fat, and 1 gram is 9 calories. So you can do the multiplication, but that's a massive thing, and I think we owe this to the public in terms of education to make sure that they making more aware switch to more healthier choices for them and for the nation at the end.
Yes, definitely.
And something to note that I think Tarek mentioned in his presentation are the nutritional labeling requirements that everyone's opting into in the GCC in the next few months. And it will help educate parents and compare, as you're saying, apples for apples. So the traffic light system will highlight that that product has too much sugar, too much salt, and it'll be clearly indicated in red. So if you're looking at a package and you're choosing between two things, as a consumer, you'll say, I want to buy low sugar, I want to buy low salt. And what we've seen in other countries where this traffic light nutritional labeling has come into place is that the companies change the formulation, and that's what Tarek was saying. They're reducing sugars in juices because they don't want to have red in the traffic light because the consumers resoundingly stop buying when there's a red in the traffic light. So if the brands that we're giving out of love to our children all of a sudden have a reduction in sugar or salt, the taste buds will catch up with the intention to eat well. And eventually, it takes time for your taste buds to reconfigure. So you don't want the sweet, you don't want the salt, but it's physiological. And I think that will happen here in the region.
I just built on this thought about the traffic lights, and I had a quick chat with Saleh during the break. I think as an industry, we should pledge voluntarily as an industry reduction of some of the potentially harmful ingredients, despite the efforts of the government to bring the traffic light. I think our responsibility to the society is to voluntarily pledge. So I will advocate on the forum of food and beverage that each of us as a member, we pledge the reduction or improvement by whatever the measure might be.
Okay, Jacek and Nicole, I am getting really convinced about this. You know, I'm feeling that we are there now, more so than during the first half. But
we have to build the movement. We have to, you know, build a bit of a force in ourselves so we can move it with more speed.
Can I link back to one other thing? I think we talked a lot about the ingredients. We talked a lot about the fact that, you know, how we can change consumer preferences. Can you shed light on production technology linked with, let's take the example of plant-based protein that can significantly change the landscape of the food and beverage manufacturing in our region?
What comes to my mind are, what we look into our business is 12 disruptive technologies. And one which I just discussed was on the protein, alternative proteins. But I think we're going to see soon acceleration in blockchain technology, traceability. So I think this is coming, and that's a part of the trust for the consumers. So they keep kind of saying, so from where is the origin of the product? Can I really understand the value chain leading to that? So I think blockchain technology will be of the importance. I believe that as well nutrigenetics coming. And I don't think it's very far that out of our watch we'll get a beep saying, okay, you need a bit more protein because your body, right, is not responding well through the day. I don't think it's very far. Today, those devices tracking our heartbeats, linking to through the cloud to the doctor's home, right? So I think we are not very far to see that technology coming as well.
Okay. All right, good, thank you. Actually, this is, Joachim, this is for you, and I wanted to understand from you, and this was not meant originally, but I'm going to ask you this question. Sustainability has been a major theme here. Sustainable and sustainable options and how we can make our products and supply chains more sustainable. Could you give us an example in your experience of any one product or value chain that has been improved in this direction? And how has that impacted overall this area? So how has it made life more sustainable for consumers?
Again, simple. Huh? You have got some example this morning here. We had the example on the transportation of the water in more friendly and sustainable packaging. We had also the example given by PepsiCo about the plastic-less can that will definitely has a major impact on the environment in this community.
Okay. And anything innovative about them that you'd like to highlight compared to what was done previously?
I bring all back to the consumer. At the end of the day, whatever we do must meet the consumer needs.
Okay.
And remember what I said in the aspiration change of the consumer. The second factor was societal and environmental matters.
Okay.
So we will have to integrate what the consumer expects to see on the packaging, in the communication that we send to the consumer if we want our innovation to be successful.
Okay. All right, fantastic. So I've heard us talking about texts that are available and how we can make them available. I've heard about how we need to change consumer preferences and they need to adopt. The last question is for you, Dominique, before I open it to the audience, is as follows, is that how can our governments and institutions enable this transformation on innovation and nutrition, health and wellness in our region?
Well, I'll probably repeat what has already been mentioned during this morning, is that I think we need to all be aligned and we need to have all these initiatives supported. We all agree that food has to become healthier. As we have just discussed, that's a possibility now and it's really at reach. We just need to have the right context and we need to have a motivating context to do it, because we also mentioned the excise tax. If we have a tax which is taxing at the same level a good for you product and a less good for you product, you won't motivate the change and you won't drive the change. So this probably needs to be adapted. As well, if we are a bit late starting versus other parts of the world, which also means that we have the chance to look at what has been happening and what has been done. And the UK model has been mentioned a few times already as well in the previous hours. And this model, if you look at the consumptions of the sugar by the food industry before it was implemented and what it is today, you can see a significant decrease. So there are options, there are best practices, there are learnings we can get from other parts of the world, so that, to answer your question, we get to the right alignment with all the actors and that we get the right support and motivation from government and other authorities.
Oh, fantastic. Can the audience here feel the sense of urgency that the panel is feeling right now behind this area? Definitely. Shall we give them a big hand firstly? Personally, thank you for this. And I see some hands in the audience. Yes, please. Can you please give the mic to him?
Good morning. That's a good start. I'm shrinking, but actually they're not advancing as fast as what the consumer really wants. That's my comment. As manufacturing, what I like to know from you guys, where's the non-GMO, where's the organic, what are those good ingredients, what are they coming in as fast as we want? Because I spent half of my time looking at the labels and I get disappointed actually more than my time. So please.
Sure. It's such a good question, and I think about it a lot. So my firm, we're advisors and investors. So we're trying to invest in solutions. So maybe I'll give an example of an investment. So the local food movement and provenance is probably something that consumers are really looking for, because now the label of organic or the label of fair trade, it doesn't resonate any longer. And you're right, consumers are really smart. And we've talked a lot about what we're going to tell the consumers to buy, but it doesn't work that way. They tell us what to make, and if we don't listen, we die. And so to your point, I think the problem is that from an ingredients perspective, they're just not readily available. So if your procurement team is told to look at the bottom line and source, which anyone in manufacturing, and I know it intimately, that's how it works, they're not understanding the consumer demand. They're looking at a profit and loss and saying, well, I need to procure these ingredients at that. And the manufacturing industry for ingredients responds. And so they create systems whereby you're making purees, pulps, juices, concentrates that are hugely processed and big batches. So in the whole system, it's like you have to unpack it. It's really hard. It's a really hard question to answer. But the opportunities, I think, lie in thinking locally, because consumers have adopted that local, even here in the UAE. I don't know very many consumers that seek out a cucumber that's imported. We all really believe that a cucumber is better if it's grown in the UAE. I think it's really accepted, and it's been a great story for local produce here. But I think if in, say, markets, the UAE being the center here, it's a big opportunity for manufacturers, because we have access to local in a really close proximity and quite cheap inputs. That 45% waste, like if it's 45% mangoes, it's pretty crazy how quick we could source mangoes around here. And I think the opportunity lies in investing, because the ingredients companies aren't gonna make pure mango for you that you can then sell to your consumer so that you find it in Carrefour. I think that's the whole food system shift, and it's coming, and there's people investing in the space for sure. But I think that will really fuel change. It needs to be cheaper for it to pass, really. I mean, and readily available.
Okay, panelists, thank you very much for this. That's all the time we have for, and let's give them a big hand again. Thank you.